Welcome to the Blue Rose Podcast, your dose of confidence to live a bold life. Here I share insights from my own journey and dive into the stories of individuals in the outdoors and athletics who are fiercely getting after life. I'm your host, Becca Blue Rose.
Hi guys, welcome to this week's episode of the podcast. It's winter. I woke up this morning and there was snow on my car, and I had to defrost my car, and I had to use my little scraper to get all the snow off my car. And I went for a run, and I had to wear gloves. And I know that everyone else is like super pumped about winter. I'm trying to be a little bit more on board with the fact that winter is here. I'm trying not to be super negative because I feel like whenever I talk negatively about winter just decides to like snow more, make me colder, and I just have a really hard time staying cold. I have a really hard time staying warm in the winter, and so I struggle with it. And also, I'm a water child, and I like to run, so those are my favorite sports. And so, winter is always just a little bit hard for me these days. But it is here, and so I'm just gonna say welcome winter. But it was nice. My best friend came this last weekend, and we went to Moab. We did Arches National Park and Canyonlands National Park. That was super fun. It was so nice to get like a few long days out in the mountains before it got super cold. And we were supposed to camp, but yeah, she was packing. So the night before she came, we were texting, and I was like, okay, like you're gonna bring the camp stove, you're gonna bring your sleeping bag, the tent, all the things. And she was like, yeah, like I got it all, right? She gets in my car when I pick her up from the airport, and she was like, so I didn't bring any of the camping stuff. It just felt like too much work. And when I started packing, I just decided I really didn't want to. So she was like, I was thinking we could just do like a really long day trip out to Moab and back. Mind you, Moab is 4 hours from where I live. So I was like, why don't we just like stay in a hotel? And I just thought it was hilarious because I was like, honestly, I was also feeling like camping felt like too much work. And I was like, honestly, a shower sounds good. So we kind of splurged on a hotel, and we were like, let's just do that. And so we ended up spending the day in the Arches, and then we went and got tacos, went to the hotel, sat in the hot tub for a super long time, woke up the next morning, went to Canyonlands. Yeah, it was a super fun weekend. And then yesterday we went to we did like a bar class, a hot yoga class. We got our nails done. We just kind of had a little like spa day. And so whenever I see my friends, most of them are like, you don't just like have one life change, you have like 25, right? Like, I don't just like pick a new hobby or something. I just am like, oh, like new year, new Becca. Like, I take that to like a full extreme, and I just like change everything in my life. I feel like I just like it's not even an identity crisis. It's just like a nope, bye, that Becca's gone. And I feel like I'm fairly good at like adapting and like reinventing myself. Um, but this time, so my friend was here, and we had so much fun. But have you ever been so stressed out that like even when you're having fun, you're like, I can feel the cortisol just like pumping through my body right now. I could just like, anytime we weren't doing anything, like when we were out running, I was like, oh my God, I'm having so much fun. When we were in the hot tub just chit chatting, like so much fun, right? The second we like stopped doing anything, I was just like, oh my God, I am so stressed out. And this friend has known me for a very long time. And so, she kind of reminded me, she's like, she's like, this is normal. Like, this is okay that you're stressed out. And I was like, no, like, I don't, like, this isn't me. Like, I don't stress like this. And she was like, no, like, you're normally like really good at, being fine. But she's like, you don't have to be fine. Like, it is okay. And I think that just kind of allowed me to set the tone for the rest of the weekend and be completely honest with her. And it was a really unique experience for me to be like having such a good time, and then also being like very stressed out at the same time. Like, there would be moments where I'm like, we would just be sitting there, and I'm just like, I'm stressing, like I'm really stressed out right now. Or I'd have a nightmare, and I'd be like, I just had the worst dream in the entire world. And she would kind of help me make light of the situation. And so I was so thankful that she was here, because I think sometimes I get very nervous about how my emotions are going to affect other people. I've always been someone that's felt very deeply, but I've also always been someone who feels like they need to deal with those emotions on their own. Maybe that's why I started a podcast, because I was like, it's basically like therapy for me. But I do feel like I have this need to deal with things on my own and to not tell the people in my life that I'm like, yeah, that I'm like really not doing well and that I'm stressed out and I'm overwhelmed. And I also just feel like, I don't know if it's like shame or if it's embarrassment, because it's like people have to deal with this, right? Like people go through life changes all the time. People get jobs. People like stress is like a daily thing. And so it's like, who am I to be so stressed out and like so unwell in this moment? Like who do I think I am to be stressed out, right? Like people have much more stressful lives than I do, much more busier, stressful situations. And I think we always do that, right? Like we compare our difficult to other people's. Um, but I think I'm slowly trying to get better at um, being more honest and realizing that like it's very selfish of me to assume that me being stressed out or me doing not so well is going to affect someone else's like mood or day, because I think I always just get worried, like I don't want to burden someone else with my emotions. But I'm starting to realize like it's not necessarily burdening them with it, it's like allowing them to support me. And I think the people in your life want that, right? Like they want to be able to support you. um, and it's again, I just think it's kind of selfish of me to assume that like me saying, hey, I'm having really bad nightmares and I'm really stressed out and I'm not sleeping, and by the way, I'm getting really bad acne because I'm so stressed out, is going to like ruin their day. You know, it's just like I'm allowed to, we're allowed to feel those things. Like we're allowed to feel all of the things that come with big changes, and we should allow the people in our lives to be there for us. So that's something that I'm really trying to work on right now, because I still have a very big mental block when it comes to like allowing myself to lean on other people. And I think maybe that comes from, you know, the fear that like that person won't be there anymore. Like maybe that like I will come to them too many times, with like saying like, hey, I'm stressed, or or like I won't feel my best for like a whole month or 2 months, and then they'll be like, I've had enough of this. And so it's like, okay, like I'm going to be very strategic about like when I tell them this is how I'm feeling, because I don't want them to be like overwhelmed or upset or like get tired of hearing how I'm feeling. But that's like so hard to do, because like feelings are literally energy in motion, and like you could be happy in the morning and sad at night and stressed in the middle of the day. Like emotions are like constantly moving. And so just realizing that like, okay, like it's okay. Like just because I want to say that it's okay, but I also think maybe the point there is like how you handle it, right? Is like, I think I look at myself and I look at people that I've experienced, and maybe where I got that narrative from is like the way people handle stress maybe isn't always the greatest. And I think like when I handle stress, I try to still be like the kindest, most generous person I can still be. Um, I try to like still check, just because I'm stressed, it doesn't mean like I can't be supportive of the people in my life. And just because I'm feeling all these things doesn't mean everything has to be about me. Like you can have that back and forth. But I think maybe that narrative just comes from like what I've experienced in terms of like what stress is in the world and like how other people handle it. And just like, you see people that like snap when they're stressed out or yell or just like aren't very kind or just aren't fun to be around. And I think that's where that narrative comes from. But like I think when I look at myself, like I really try hard not to be all of those things. Like I think there's a way to be a good human being and still be like stressed out and be like, okay, like I'm overwhelmed and I'm stressed out, but like my best friend is here and so I'm going to have a really good time. But also I think the honesty and the vulnerability to be like, hey, like I am having a really good time and I'm really happy you're here, but also I just want you to know that like I'm going through XYZ and I might just be a little more stressed out and on edge while you're here. But then also just allowing that person to be there for you and be like, okay, like, what do you need to talk about? Like, what do you want to work through? And also just like having her validate me and be like, you're not insane. Yeah, so that was just, it's been a very unique experience for me. And so also to kind of backtrack, when I said, like I don't just change one thing, I change everything. And right now I have, I'm not changing everything. I think this Becca is just very different than I think maybe the Becca that my friends expect of me. Like if you asked me a year ago what I would be doing right now, this would not be it. Like what I'm about to share with you, like would not be it. I would have said, I'll be traveling again. I'll be working at a hostel somewhere. I'll be in another country. You know, whatever it might be, like it would not have been this. But I also think back to last year, Becca, in October. I think October is my crisis month. Last year in October, I had like no idea what I was going to do. I just got back from traveling. And at that point, I was so done with traveling. I was so tired. I was so tired of not having a place to call home. I was tired of not having a place to put my stuff. I was tired of not having friends. I felt very lonely. I felt very misaligned, misguided. Like I didn't know what to be doing. And I felt like because I had spent the better half of the last like 2 years before that, kind of like traveling and working at hostels and coffee shops and doing all the fun things, I was like, I'm never going to be employed again. So there was like a lot of anxiety last October. Um, but like fast forward to this year, so I did just get a new job. So I will be moving down to Salt Lake and I will be moving in with my boyfriend. Um, and you might be like, okay, those aren't very big changes. But if you know me well, if you've listened to this podcast, they're pretty big changes for me. I haven't ever signed a 12-month lease for an apartment. I've always had the flexibility to kind of like come and go as I please. I haven't had a boyfriend in 6 years, and now after 6 months, I am moving in with one. I have not had a place to call home besides like my home where my family lives, but like my home in I think really since I left for college, because to be honest, college never really felt like home because of COVID and because I studied abroad for so long. And then after college, I traveled for 2 years. So, like, I really haven't had a place to call home since high school. And Utah is finally starting to feel like, oh, okay, like when I go back to Bend to see my family, I'm still like, oh, I'm so excited to go home. Like, I'm so excited to go home to Utah. Like, it finally feels that way, which is a very new experience for me. It's very new for me to like have friends to go running with consistently and to feel like I'm starting to build a community. And, it is very new for me to I've never had a job for like yes, I've had a job for a year, but I've never had like an adult salaried like big kid job. To be honest with you, I never thought I would have one. I'm very excited about my new job and I'm very excited about moving in with my boyfriend. But a year ago, like this is just not what I would be expecting to do. And I think another reason, they're very big changes is because, I've been getting a lot of text messages recently. Like the world has been testing me, let me tell you. So I was on my way back from Moab and my friend got a text from her friend that was like, hey, like, what's Becca up to? Like, is she still house sitting, dog sitting? Like, I'm moving to Hawaii and I need a dog sitter for like 3 months. Does she want to come dog sit for me? Like, how much does she charge? And I was sitting there and I was like, Becca, like, it took like it took a few deep breaths. It took a little bit of like a, ugh, and then it was like, okay, like you're fine. You like don't be impulsive. Like, I feel like I still have to fight the urge to say yes to things like that because that excited me. I was like, wait, yeah, I want to go move to Hawaii for 3 months and watch your dog. But then when I bring myself back home, I'm like, no, Becca, like you like where you live, you like stability, you like, you need a job, like like you have to do those things, like you want to do those things. And so But I was like, the world is literally like testing me. And then I had another friend recently text me and he's like, hey, I'm going to Japan for like a month this summer, probably. Like, if you want my room in Hawaii, like something about Hawaii, like, if you want my room in Hawaii, you're more than welcome to have it. I had another friend who's like, hey, you coming to Europe this year? I'm going to be around. Like, let's meet up. Let's hang out. And I was like, oh, like, dude, I would love to, but no, I'm not. Like, I'm not traveling right now. And so recently I've just had a lot of people, because it had been previously what I had been doing. So a lot of people that I've met while I've been traveling, a lot of my friends that are now traveling, they're kind of like, hey, where are you? Where are you going to be this month? I'd love to see you. And I'm like, cool, I'm still in Utah. And it's been a very weird, it's been a weird process for me because um, I've always feared stability and consistency. And now that I have it a little bit more, I'm like, oh, wait, why have I feared this? Like, this is super nice. There's nothing wrong with being comfortable. And I used to think that being comfortable was wrong. So there was like my first initial issue. And I've gotten over that. But I think the fear part of my brain is like, oh my God, like, I have a job and I have a boyfriend and I have an apartment. And next thing you know, like, I'm gonna have a dog and a child. And like, the next thing you know, I'm like never gonna go on a trip again. And the next thing, like, and there's just so much I still want to do. Like, I want to bike pack across New Zealand and I want to, like, I haven't been to Japan yet. I haven't been to Southeast Asia. Like, there's so many places I want to travel and places I want to experience. And so I think the fear part of my brain is like, okay, like, keep moving because once you stop, you'll never start again, which I think is wrong. But I do think my brain, that's where my brain likes to go. It's like, you, my family used to call it, they still call it, I don't want to say used to, they still call it running. Like, for some reason, they've all had this perception of me that like I'm running from something or I was running from something. I don't think they're right, but I also don't think they're wrong. I don't think I was running. Like, I look back on my life and I think of like, like, the only reason I wouldn't have gone and traveled was because of the fear that like I wouldn't be able to get a job when I got back, or the fear of that would uh what people would perceive of me as like flaky or just non-committal because of the lifestyle that I had previously lived, right? So the only reason I wouldn't have done that stuff is because of the fear of that. And so I did those things, and I think occasionally that fear would creep up. Like, my parents would be like, like, you kind of got to, grow up a little bit, right? You can't keep doing this. But I look back on that and I'm like, no, like, I'm so glad that I did what I did when I did it, because it made me who I am, and those experiences have made me who I am. And now too, realizing like, no, like, I still have the ability to be in a committed relationship, and I still have the ability to commit to a job and to sign a year lease, and I still have the ability to get a job, because that was a big fear, is like, oh, you don't have X and Y on your resume, so you're never going to get a job. But that was false, because I still got a job. And on to that point, for anyone who thinks that like traveling is going to stop them, or like that they just need resume builders, I just want to say that I think life is more of a resume builder than you think it is. And the fact that I have traveled and seen the world makes me so much more of a good communicator. It makes me able to talk to more people. The fact that I have built a podcast as a passion project is literally the reason that I've gotten my last two jobs. So I just want to say that, like, if you want to travel or do something, like, you should do it. And I personally think the fear of like not having your life together, or not following the traditional path, or, oh, I'm going to have a gap in my resume. Like, who cares? Like, literally, who cares? Um, I personally, it wasn't, it was a fear of mine, and I won't lie and say that it didn't stress me out at times, but I just want to say now that I'm on the other side of it, and like I was able to get a job, and I did have gaps in my resume, and but there were people that saw me and saw my podcast and saw my passion, and they were like, yeah, like we want her. They will hire you for who you are, not because of the piece of paper. And so I just want to put that out there, because I think, that was like a big conversation within my family, within my friends, that was like, like sometimes you got to grow up, and I think they put the narrative in my head that like I wouldn't be able to, that I wouldn't know how to. And to be fair, like I am not perfect. Like I still need to get some things together with like my finances, and I still need to learn a lot about like, yeah, certain things that come with adulthood. Like this is such a silly thing that made me feel so embarrassed, but like I I have a car, uh, as you do, and I didn't know that you were supposed to put the stickers on your license plate, and so I got a ticket, and I remember, my registration was updated, like I my car was updated, right? But I just didn't put the stickers on because I had been traveling, and like I just didn't know that you were supposed to do that. And that's probably something people learn when you're like 16 and you first get a car. I just did not know that. I've never had a car registered in my name. This was my brother's old car. Like it just, I did not know. And I felt so embarrassed when I figured that out.
Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're someone who loves the great outdoors and pushing your limits. I want to introduce you to Flow Zone Performance Coaching, the ultimate online training platform for outdoorsy people who like to do hard things. Flow Zone Performance Coaching is designed for those who crave adventure, whether it's climbing, trail running, mountain biking, skiing, or just exploring the wild. Coach Jess specializes in preparing you for the challenges of the mountains with a unique program called FZ Mountain Fit. FZ Mountain Fit is a subscription style program designed to help you build strength, endurance, and resilience for your outdoor adventures. If you're ready to elevate your outdoor performance and join a community of like-minded adventurers, check out Flow Zone Performance Coaching today. Head over to www.fzperformance.com or at FZ Mountain Fit on Instagram to start your journey with Flow Zone Performance Coaching. Trust me, you won't regret it.
And so as I kind of step into this like different phase of my life, like there's a lot of things that I'm learning, but I think the point there is like you don't need to know something until you need to know it. And my boyfriend would call that a truism. But I just think I'm starting to learn these things, and I'm starting to realize how much I don't know. And I'm also starting to realize like how new this is for me and how uncomfortable it is for me. A lot of people would argue that like getting on a plane and not knowing you're going to sleep, and figuring out how to live in a foreign country, like, I'm just like, if I can figure out how to open a bank account in a foreign country, and I can live in a foreign country where I don't speak the language, and I can do all of that, like surely I can be an adult American human being where everyone speaks English, right? Like surely I can figure it out. But it's more overwhelming for me to feel more comfortable, more settled, have a routine, have like the known is almost a little bit more uncomfortable for me than the unknown. And I think that's because there's a certain level of excitement maybe that comes with the unknown that I like thrive off of. Like I thrive off of not knowing, like I do love like figuring it out, winging it, that kind of thing. And so I think in this period of my life, it's like, okay, like the next year of my life, like I have never had an entire year of my life planned out. Like for the next year, I will definitely be in this job, and I will definitely be living in the same apartment with my boyfriend. And like I've never had that. I have never had probably more than 6 months of my life planned out at a time. Now, I'm super excited about it, but also like that is so new for me. And the point I want to make there is that I think that we forget that exciting things can cause stress and anxiety as well. I think I get nervous to even tell, my boyfriend like how stressed out I am, because I don't want him to think like, oh, I don't want to move in with him, right? Like I don't want anyone to think, oh, I don't want this job, right? But it's not that. It's like I'm nervous, but I'm also excited, but it's just simply that this is a new experience for me, and it doesn't make it bad that I'm stressed and anxious. It just makes it new. And I have never had this type of new. Like if I was going on a plane to Japan right now, like I probably would not be nervous. I'd just be simply excited, right? Because to an extent, that kind of situation is more like I just know more about that situation because I've done it before. And so for this, like it's just again, I'm gonna say it again. It's just like a new experience, and it feels good and it feels right. But I think the deepest, darkest parts of our brains just want to play out any negative scenario that could possibly happen that don't even deserve air. Like literally what something I've been stressing about. I was debating. I was like, do I like change my LinkedIn profile to say like my job? But I was like, what if they change their mind by the time I start? Like, what if they just are like, yeah, JK, like we don't want to hire you? Or my boyfriend is in Hawaii right now, and some of the nightmares I've been having is like he's gonna just like come back from Hawaii and be like, sorry, I fell in love with a hot beach babe while I was gone. I'm not moving in with you, and bye. And so like it's just those things that I'm just like, okay, like cool, bye. I think one of the biggest stressors for me actually, and maybe I'm just thinking about this as I've, kind of talked about this for a while now, is the potential for something that I get comfortable slash attached to go away. And that is very scary for me. So I feel like in the last 4 years of my life have been very like, okay, this is going to end. And I know it's going to end. Right. So whether that was someone I was like, so I haven't had a boyfriend since I was 19, but I have dated people. Right. But we were never like in a serious relationship because we knew it was going to end. Like it was always like, oh, like 3 months. And then we knew it was going to end. Right. Or like when I was in Switzerland, when I was in Spain, like Spain was 9 months. I knew it was going to end. Switzerland, I knew it was going to end. So I think I've never been attached to anything, and I've never allowed myself to get so comfortable that I wouldn't be able to say bye to it, because I always knew in the back of my mind that I was going to have to let go of it at some point in time. And so here I am with things that I am very excited about and very attached to, and they don't have an end date. Even friends that I met in Europe, it's like, well, like I know that we'll be friends from afar, but like, you're not going to be in my immediate vicinity. So like friendships even felt very like timely. It was like, okay, like this is going to end. And so everything felt very free flowing, very moving, like new. And so now it's like, oh, okay, like everything feels very stable, and like I'm getting attached, and I'm liking these new things. But like then what happens when they go away, right? Like what happens if I get so attached to these things and then they go away? Like that terrifies me. And obviously I can't control that, and like that's not a reason not to do something, but it's a big fear. Like your mind just loves to like put you in places that you don't want to be. And I think right now the this period that I'm in is very interesting because those like in between periods where like something's coming, but it hasn't happened yet, and it's not going to happen for a little bit, but it's coming. But it's like you can't focus on anything else because it's coming. But it's like you're trying to get stuff done, but it's really hard to get stuff done. And so that's kind of the period I'm in right now, because I start my new job tomorrow, and then I don't move into my new apartment for like 2.5 weeks. So I have to drive an hour to and from work for the next 2.5 weeks. So I have to like kind of build a routine for the next 2.5 weeks that's not going to be my routine after that. So it's a very like in between period where you're like, all right, like I'm kind of just floating in space, and the world is kind of just like, I'm just kind of here doing something. But like it kind of feels hard to like make goals and do things, because you're like, all right, like I'm not going to be here for much longer, and it feels very weird. And so that's kind of like where I'm at right now. I don't know if anyone else feels that way when they're in like these in between phases. But anyways, I don't necessarily have a ton of advice on like, yeah, how do you handle stress? Because like I'm having nightmares 7 days a week, and I don't know how to make them stop, right? I think that doing things that make you feel good are obviously very important, but I think the one thing that I found most helpful in this situation is just being vulnerable and being honest with the people in my life and just being like, no, actually I'm stressed. And if I start crying, like we were getting our nails done yesterday and I was just like, I might start, like I almost cried in the nail salon chair. I was like pretending to read, trying not to cry because I just felt like this overwhelming urge to cry. And then today I was like at the grocery store and I started crying because my mom asked me how I was. And I'm like, obviously I'm not fine, mom. Because I had, like, so I think talking it out a little bit and letting people validate you and reassure you and tell you it's okay, as cheesy as it sounds, that's kind of what's been helping me right now is just having, and also I think, back to what I said at the beginning, because because I've been moving around so much, because I haven't, had the time to like build relationships. I was always in a different time clock. I couldn't just call my mom whenever I wanted to because she was sleeping half the time, or I couldn't just call my best friends, or I couldn't, I've seen my best friend more in the last year than I had in the last 2 years because we're only a flight away. And I think that has also been a new experience for me to have people to rely on in these situations, because normally I would have to deal with it on my own if it's, 9 o'clock in Spain and it's 3 o'clock in the morning in America, and I can't just pick up the phone and call my mom or call my best friend. Like I just have to kind of sit with my emotions. So I think that's another reason I got really good at dealing with things on my own, is because I kind of had to. I didn't have that support system. And so I think with this, this stress and this anxiety, I'm realizing like, wow, like you do have a support system and you have people that love you and you have people that do care about you. And so it's okay to lean on them. But then again, there's that fear of like, if I get used to leaning on them and then they're not there, like that's scary. But again, it's not a reason not to do it. And I think, while maybe I don't have a ton of advice on like how to manage this kind of stress, in terms of like this kind of life change, because I have not done it. I think another fear that I had was like, right, I'm known as, people that listen to this podcast, something that someone always says to me is like, we're like living different lifestyles, right? Like we're we're on a different path than other people. Like people that I've met like through traveling have really related to me, because I've chosen a very different path in my life. And so I think there's another fear here of like, okay, what if I take this job and I have the stability of this lifestyle, and then people don't relate to me because I'm not doing what I was normally doing. Like I'm not doing what they expect me to do. I don't think that this decision was expected from like a lot of people in my life. I think they're like, wait, what? Like you're kidding me, right? Like it just was out of the blue. It was unexpected. It wasn't out of the blue for me because I don't talk to everyone all the time, it was very out of the blue for them. And I think just a very different Becca than they're used to. And so I think I also just got a little nervous of like, okay, like maybe people on my podcast aren't going to relate to me anymore. Like maybe they're not going to want to listen to this because, I have a normal like 9 to 5 job, and I'm not just like woohoo in around all the time. But I think I've been trying to talk myself off of that one and just say like, okay, like, no, because this is also not like a normal thing that like Becca would do. And it's a very new experience for me. So I think it's very relatable in that sense. And it's very relatable because like I'm not doing this because of any outside factors. Like I'm actually doing this because I want to and I'm excited about it and it feels like the right step for me. If it didn't, I would not have taken it. I talked about this a little bit in my interview for my job last year, about like how I felt in that moment of like, is this aligned? And so that's what I do when I go into interviews. Like if I hadn't felt good, if I hadn't felt seen and heard, if I hadn't felt like this was a good energy match with the people that I'd be working with, like I would not have taken the job, right? And so I think it's just like a new chapter, and I think I just need to wrap my head around that a little bit and not let my fears take over of like, okay, like maybe I'm not doing like the non-traditional path, but I still think maybe the way I choose to do things and the way I make my decisions is still like interesting in that sense. And I think that's maybe the conclusion I'm trying to tell myself when I think like, oh my God, like no one's going to want to listen to me talk anymore. But anyways, all that to be said, the point there was that like no one has it all figured out. And so, we can be going down one road and it can completely change. And that's like slowly and surely what I've started to learn. It's why I don't love like New Year's resolutions. It's why I don't love, like, I think it's good to have like an idea of what you want to happen and like, yeah, sure, plan it out. But I think the world has a way of just like completely changing that and just like putting you on your toes, because again, this is not something that I could have like manifested or like uh thought about. Like, yes, in a sense I was like, I want to be surrounded by people that I love, and I want a job that fulfills me, and all of those things, and I want to feel at home, and I want to feel, I did really want those things. But this is like something I could never have seen for myself a year ago. And I think no one has it figured out, and that's okay. I'm really learning that like the older I get, the more I don't know. And also the more new experiences I say yes to, the more I learn. And so I think that's what I'm just trying to go with right now, is that this is a new experience. And regardless of how it goes, I'm excited and I'm scared. And those are allowed to coexist at the same time. And I'm going to learn. Like I'm going to learn if this works for me. If it doesn't, I'm going to learn how to balance, stability with also spontaneity. I'm going to learn how to be in just like a different setting. I'm going to learn what it feels like to just like have more consistency and stability and have a home. And I think I'm just going to learn a lot about myself from a different perspective, which I think can be, yes, very scary, but also very exciting. And what I want to end on saying is no one has to understand your decisions but you. And if you feel good, then that's all that matters. If you feel like this is the right step for you, that's all that matters. And if you feel like your life is changing and you feel stressed and you feel like overwhelmed and you feel like you have no idea what you're doing, well, I also just want to validate you, because that's pretty much how I feel. And it took a lot of time to realize that like you can be stressed and you can be anxious and you can be scared even when the thing that's coming is good for you. I'm very into energy and like feeling into things. And so I think I felt at first that negative energy was like, oh my God, I'm making the wrong choice. But after I let that thought settle, I was just like, I don't feel that way at all, though. Like, I don't feel like I'm making the wrong choice about anything. And so I think it just took me a minute to be like, no, like they can exist at the same time. Like, you can be excited, you can be scared, you can be all the things, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I encourage you this week to just be honest with the people in your life about where you're at and how you're feeling about your decisions. And I will keep you guys posted on how things go. I do want to do an episode. This is kind of a side note, but I think a lot of people don't know that I have a boyfriend, because I don't really talk about him too much. But that's another big transition for me, just like not having a boyfriend for 6 years and then moving in with one after 6 months. And there's just a lot of thoughts surrounding that I think I've had friends that just think that would be a good relatable topic. So I do want to talk about that. So that will be in an episode to come. So stay tuned for that. But all right, guys, I hope you have a good day and a good week, and I'll chat with you soon. Bye.
And that's a wrap on today's Dose of Confidence. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. If you found inspiration here, why not share it with a friend? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and sign up for our newsletter so you don't miss an episode. Sending lots of love your way. Until next time, this is Becca, encouraging you to live your boldest life.